lighting up the night sky, relentless explosions, and panic in the streets as Israel fights back.
The internal struggle between two ancient foes. Hey, it's me, Depresso Espresso, and once again, I have more ramblings on topics I have no knowledge about. So let's get started on this pay-per-view wrestling event. In one corner, you have the penny-counting rising star David, and in the other corner, the explosive Hamas. But ladies and gentle beans, I'm not here to give my political views on this matter. Simply, the topic is far too complicated, and if you research hard enough, you might find that both sides, to a certain degree, have a point. I'm more interested in figuring out why the far lefties support Palestine. Yes, those lovable, physically malformed, can't keep a gerb, die has melted their brain group of people. In my book, it simply does not make any sense, especially from a philosophical or moral sense. I mean, I can understand why the right may be on Israel's side. Closer Western values, the Jews pulled themselves up by the bootstrap against the odds. There's more favorability for the Jews over Muslims from the right. Even this poll expresses the average Israeli's political perspective, which is either centrist or right. Of course, it's much more complicated than what I laid out, but the reason for support for Israel by the right is straightforward and easy to understand. Same can't be said about our favorite rainbow-colored teddy bears and their eye-fluttering gaze towards Hamas. This does not make sense, so let's see if my minimal effort investigation can shed some light on these hairy armpits called the far left. I won't bore you with the details, but here's a quick uneducated history lesson by a coffee bean. Basically, the Jews lost their home. With the assistance of the Brits, they were given Israel back. Though a minority then, over the course of many decades, the Jews grew in power, especially with their military might overshadowing the strength of the Palestinian army. As with their growth in military, they expanded out, taking more of the land for themselves. The Palestinians, who at one point were the majority, are now the minority. Let's get one thing clear. I don't think one side is 100% right over the other. Both teams caused atrocities. Both teams can argue points that make sense. It's a messy situation. So why do certain people on the left support Palestine over Israel? One could be that the Jews, who at one point were the underdogs of the world, have now become the symbolism of elitism and success. I mean, a group of, less than 20 million people who were constantly ravaged by history, faced genocide and constant anti-Semitic discrimination, somehow overcame some of their burdens. It's funny, back in the day, in the West, anti-Semitism was more of a right-wing carryover from the 20s and 30s. People were saying the Rothschilds were running the world, but that point was somewhat discredited thanks to World War II. I suppose the left loves to fight for the underdog no matter the facts presented. Take BLM, that entire George Floyd situations was pretty terrible. The guy didn't deserve what happened to him, but like any situation, many jump to conclusions. In this case, the assumption was racism. Now, I'm not going to say it was not racism, but I have an issue with assuming it was. And with that one incident, justification for property destruction and perhaps uncalled rioting appeared. If you ask a supporter about property destruction, their response will often be, "It was government property, bro, who cares?" Well, no, it was also private property too, bro. If a black man is killed by a cop, it does not mean automatic racism. And on that very day that George Floyd was murdered, we saw instant support without waiting for facts to present themselves. I smell the white savior complex. Oh, and let's not forget minorities wanting to use victims and white guilt to enforce a narrative or exert some sort of power over others. Can't just blame the whiteys here, the cheeky minorities play a role. Well, with the Israel and Palestine situation, the left view Israel as a white cop pressing his knee on the neck of Hamas Floyd. Another angle is the default position to be opposite to the right. If Israel aligns closer to the West, and in particular the right, well, the left must in turn bat for the other side. I can't help but sense a racial component here. I'm not saying it is racism, but that could play a role. Hear me out. Between the Jews and the Muslims, perhaps symbolically, the Jews represents the white colonizers with a fearsome army, slowly devouring the rest of the land. Keep in mind, this way of thinking is a little contradictory. Technically, the Jews are indigenous. You'd think the left would be sympathetic. Like if you work in Australia for a big time corporation, often they will start their team meetings with some acknowledgement to the rightful owners of the land, aka the Aboriginal people. Basically, it does nothing besides guilt trip people. And really, it's a statement given so some chick from HR can flick her bean over pretending to care. Now imagine if Aboriginals were booted from their country and later reinstated and then started to expand. Would these same lefties be okay with siding with the government over the indigenous people of the land? Of course not. And yet, they side with Hamas. Interesting, don't you think? And then there is another conundrum. Philosophically, both the left and Hamas have very different values that are not remotely compatible. It is strictly forbidden to be gay, trans, or any sort of species you wish to identify as. The left's extreme focus on expelling bigots from all corners of the West is a huge factor for their self perceived heroism. Let's get a little real here. For some, these libs use the label bigot to exert power and control, hence why the smallest infraction can lead to extreme social exclusions and demonization. I've met insecure women that get on edge when someone uses the word guys to refer to a group of people, and yet support a group of people who want you dead, especially if you're born female but identify as a guy. Strange, right? I suspect they are creating a version of reality they wish to be true. It's kind of like when 9/11 happened, there was rising tension between the Middle East and the West. The Muslims had that slogan, Islam is a religion of peace. Well, here's the thing. Never take your worldview from a slogan. Islam is not a religion of peace. It's a religion of social governance, religion of spirituality, religion of war, religion of exclusion, as well as a religion of peace, amongst other philosophies. Simply, it's a religion of many things, good, bad, warts, and all. You see, the lefties ignore Hamas and their beliefs because they don't want to blame that ethnic group. Though if that ethnic group were white and Christian, different story, right? I mean, I'm always stunned at how they can bash and over criticize Christians, but never do the same for Muslims. They treat Muslims differently. They like to exclude and place different rules for different groups. Not very egalitarian, if you ask me. By the way, I'm not bashing Muslims. I'm simply pointing out the hypocrisy here. If you're going to be hypercritical of one group, be equally critical of the other. If Christians were getting a free pass and Muslims weren't, I'd be pointing that out too. I mentioned 9/11 earlier. That could also be a contributing factor too. That event split the world. Muslims, which at that point many Westerners didn't really know too much about nor cared, were unfortunately perceived as barbaric, tyrannical, and backwards. From the left's perspective, they were seen as misunderstood victims, throwing out the typical, my Muslim neighbor seems nice, so therefore Muslims equal nice routine. You see, life is complicated. Not all Muslims are the same. Most are fine, in fact. At the same time, there can be issues that derive from certain groups, the same way horrible acts have been conducted by Christians throughout history. And in today's climate, the countless queer kids who transitioned, thinking they were in the wrong body but were simply gay. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle. So, despite Hamas, which is an outgrowth of the Muslim Brotherhood, being the poster boy of Palestine, for some odd reason the lefties support them. This isn't a situation where people are simply supporting a Muslim government. They are, in fact, supporting a terrorist organization, an organization that actively condemns every single letter in the LGBT alphabet soup group. They are in odds with those belief systems. Once again, I'm not saying that Israel is right here. I simply don't get why, and I mean why with a capital W, would these furry lipped princesses be in support of the thing that condemns them? Okay, I know what people are going to say. We support the Palestinian people. Sure, you can do that, but what about the Israeli people? You know, if you're going to play that game, and really you're ultimately supporting Hamas here, not the people. How else could you support them besides hoping Hamas destroys the other side? I suspect a lot of this has to do with the lack of education on the subject. I mean, they seem as educated as me, which is pretty bad. The hive mind is going strong here, and that hive mind can be seen around the Western world protesting with their lack of imagination or creativity when it comes to sign making. I'm sorry, it's just so generic and typical. They should take a page from professional wrestling. At least they knew where it's at. How amazing are these signs? It's really true what they say. The left can't meme. I'm not against protesting, especially for a good cause, but let's be real. You'll protest, go home to your fat wife or limp wristed husband, then continue on with your Reddit informed lives. You did nothing but waste a day just to look like a hero. And I think it's this self proclaimed heroism and different rules for different people might be the thing that irks a lot of people. That's like someone saying, I can't eat bacon anymore because I saw a video of pigs being slaughtered inhumanely, and that is just not kosher with me. And then when you bring up how you saw images of Israeli and Palestinian parents crying over their deceased kids and how it made you feel, that same person goes, I don't care, let both sides kill each other. Odd example, right? Well, that actually happened when I was hanging out with a socialist friend. Oh, and if you eat pizza with bacon on it, he will first refuse, then after 5 minutes will request a slice. I kid you not. This actually happened. Sorry, just had to throw that out there. And that's the thing. Their inconsistent morality, all at the cost of tribalistic thinking, is part of the issue. These are people who can't stand discipline or self improvement and lack any hard work. It all comes down to privilege and never to do with merit. It's like that little skinny nerd who's got a vendetta against muscle bound gym dudes. They instantly think these dudes are dumb as a doorknob and the ladies should be chasing them instead. Firstly, you don't know if this person is dumb or not. He might be way smarter than you. Or the lame saying girls only go for assholes. Or maybe a lot of women go for men who have confidence, and some guys who are assholes have confidence. But it's the confidence factor that plays a big role. Now, what is the real reason skinny nerd boy disliking the muscle boys? Simply, they can't compete against better men, so they tarnish their reputation. It's the sleazy underdog approach. And I suspect that sort of thinking plays a key role as to why the left support Hamas. It's the predator versus prey mindset. But here's the thing, they are predators hiding behind pity and righteousness. Check out this clip from Rick and Morty that sums up the idea.
You self-righteous piece of shit! You took my family!
I took your family? Who do you think had more taken from them when you shot 20 cc's of liquid dream killer into my daughter? She was Rick's daughter, Jerry. She had options.
Oof.
That all ended because she felt sorry for you. You act like prey, but you're a predator. You use pity to lure in your victims. It's how you survive. I survive because I know everything. That snake survives because children wander off, and you survive because people think, oh, this poor piece of shit, he never gets a break. I can't stand the deafening silent wails of his wilting soul. I guess I'll hire him or marry him.
Now for some real talk, coffee talk. Careful of anyone who appears harmless, but is in fact driven by extreme insecurities, as they might justify their own pitiful existence by projecting it onto the causes they support, no matter how hypocritical that cause may be. My name is Depresso Expresso. If you like the content, please subscribe, like, and comment below. This is a new channel, and any type of support will help it grow.